I took the bait, hook, line and sinker, and got Arc Raiders during the Steam Winter Sale. The game has a good blend of game mechanics and the reviews are quite accurate. But if you happen to have older hardware, is the game worth buying, or is it going to be money down the drain? The game states the RX 580 and the GTX 1050 Ti for their minimum spec GPU, but these two cards belong to completely different tiers of performance. This alone made me realize that this is probably what the devs had available for testing, and that other hardware might work just as well. Now, what hardware are we talking about here? Well, for the first attempt, we'll be using the Polaris family of cards that I happen to have. The head of the family in the shape of the RX 580, and despite its scrappy look, this is the real one with 2304 shaders and 80GB of GDDR5, not the cut down version. But that version with 2048 shaders is also present, but under its real name of RX 570. This card also has just 4GB of VRAM. And junior here, the RX 460, routinely mislabeled by the driver as RX 560. At just 2GB of VRAM, this card is firmly planted below the minimum specs. For the test system, I used the custom build PC I made the previous year, but with a Ryzen 5 5600 CPU and 32 MHz of DDR4 running in dual channel, but at 3600 MHz, a bit more than the original 3000 MHz kit. And before we go into results, I'm going to mention that I used low settings for all three tested resolutions, without any upscaling. In this kind of videos I usually start off with 1080 resolution results, not this time around though, and the reason for this can be seen on screen right now. Even at 720 resolution, the amount of VRAM needed is firmly above 2GB, routinely going for 3. Cards that lack the VRAM will fall back to game assets that are at their lowest level of detail, sometimes with hilariously bad results. In the light of this, the FPS results for the RX 460 need to be taken with a dose of salt that would have any normal person, your doctor included, get a heart attack. 62 FPS for the average and 50 FPS for the 1% lows. The RX 560 manages 103 FPS for the average and mid-70s for the 1% lows. The RX 580 does pretty much the same with 111 FPS for the average and 68 for the 1% lows. Again, at this resolution the VRAM usage is still tame, and the extra 4GB of VRAM and 256 shaders are not critical. Now, while playing at 720 resolution is feasible, increasing the resolution will help you spot enemies from longer distances, so 1600 by 900 is a good step in that direction. I did not test the RX 460 here. The blob seen at 720 resolution will not magically look better. But both the RX 570 and RX 580 cards manage playable performance, with the former averaging 78 FPS while the latter reaching low 80s. The 1% lows numbers are 61 FPS for the RX 570 and 66 FPS for the RX 580. Now, while this game is an online PvP extraction shooter, the pace is fairly slow, so I will actually hold it to single player standards, where the 1% lows higher than 30 FPS is acceptable. Considering the performance in at 1600 by 900, this then means that we can still increase the resolution and the game should remain playable. And at 1080 resolution, both RX 570 and RX 580 manage average frame rates above 60 FPS. The 1% lows remained above 50 FPS for both cards, so the game experience remained good, at least in terms of hardware performance. I did not make it back to the elevator in all my runs. So, there you have it. If you own any of the RX 470, RX 570, 480 or 580 cards, this game should run just fine at low settings. And while 8GB variants will be a better choice, 4GB cards will run this particular game just as well. There are a few more questions related to this game that I want to get answered, some involving other video cards, some involving other CPUs. Stay tuned if you're interested. As for this one, we're done. I hope this video was worth looting, that you had a successful descent back to Esperanza, and I'll see you back for the